Yeah, I've traveled a lot around in Kentucky, talking about teamwork and peace, and I spent some time in the General Assembly in Frankfurt and in Washington, D.C., talking to our state and national representatives, and I was shocked at the response. They have people in their office wanting to talk about legislation, money, serious issues. I walk in there, I'm not looking for legislation, I'm not looking for money, and I'm not looking for enforcement. I just tell them we're there about youth violence. We went to the front of the line. All our representatives take nothing more seriously than violence in the community, and in our General Assembly and in our governor's office. Sat down, we received a wonderful supporting letter from Senator McConnell, from Representative Barr in my district, from Speaker Stumbo, from the governor, Governor Beshear, from the Lieutenant Governor, and Secretary Grimes. We walked in right into the office. I felt so uncomfortable getting such good treatment. Nothing is more important to all these people in office than violence, especially violence in our youth. And I think the other one is our Senator Alice Horgan-Kerr. So it seems that violence in Kentucky, or I should say peace in Kentucky, is really in the DNA of Kentucky. And this is where I really hope we can lead the way in the country with this teamwork and getting some substantial reduction of violence. And it seems like people in office or running for office have it on their #1 list. We, for example, we just got a letter. We are right now in Kentucky's 3rd District, I believe. Yesterday, when a lot of things going on in the U.S. Congress, but we received a gracious letter from John Yarmouth, the U.S. representative for this district, who, again, they have quite a few problems in Washington, D.C., took the time to write us this letter, and I'm going to read it to you now. Dear friends, thank you for inviting me to join you this morning. Although I am unable to be there in person, I am proud to add my voice to all those here who are committed to reducing violence in our community and across the Commonwealth. As you know, young people face pressure from all sides, and negative influences can be overwhelming. But each one of you here today has made an important choice to engage the critical work of reducing violence and to set positive examples for all others in our community. Thank you for your dedication, and I am so proud to support these efforts at home and in Congress. I will continue to stand with you and reduce violence in our community and throughout our country. Sincerely, John Yarmouth, Member of Congress. Excuse me. So people running for office here in Kentucky, people in office in Kentucky nationally, don't let them put them down. They actually have their priorities right where they should be, in my opinion. Speaking of teamwork, it's going to take all parts of the community. It's going to take the schools. It's going to take the mayor's office. It's going to take enforcement. It's going to take the community. Our next person is from Jefferson County Public Schools. Over 100,000 youths in there. Obviously, there's not going to be a solution without schools, and certainly that's true for Jefferson County. So we are honored, extremely honored. I want to make sure I got your name right. Aukram Burton, is that right? Okay. And representing Jefferson County Schools. And he is the multicultural education diversity of Jefferson County Schools, of diversity, equity, and poverty programs. That's a big title and a big job. Come on up.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
All right. Good morning. I have 2 hats here. One, I want to welcome you to the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. I am a board member here. I've been a board member for 2 years, and I'm in charge of programming, educational programming here at the center. So welcome, and I know how difficult it was coming out into this cold weather and scraping your windshields and all of that. And I also come to you with another hat, which is I am the diversity and multicultural specialist for the Jefferson County Public Schools in the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Poverty Programs. I've been with the school district for about 15 years now, but I actually started out in education back in 1977 as a high school teacher. So this topic that we're talking about today, violence, is something that I've been involved with throughout my whole career. In Boston, Massachusetts, as a high school teacher, and then an administrator, and then in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. And then I came here. And I'm going to tell you, I've been at countless meetings similar to what we're at today. It's a problem that has been with us for quite some time. All right, now let's face it, we are in a violent country, all right, number one. So what I want to talk about today is education and the importance of education to answer some of the questions that Anthony put forward to us today. Because I really think that some of those questions can be answered through our ability to develop education. Alternative education as well. I mean, we need to work with the school department, but we also need to have educational programs in our community. So there's two things I want to discuss briefly, and then I'll step down. The first thing is, we've all been listening to the news today or yesterday about the loss of great leader Nelson Mandela. When Doug called me and I returned his call, I told him, and this is before Madiba passed, I told him that I wanted to talk a little bit about Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a concept that comes from the Xhosa people in South Africa. And Madiba, that's his people. All right? So what is Ubuntu? And you spell that U-B-U-N-T-U. Ubuntu, simply said, is I am because we are. I am because we are. In other words, I can't be who I am without you, and vice versa. It's a community. So when you look at Madiba's life, and you look at what happened in Robben Island, I've actually been back and forth. I've been in his prison cell. I've been back and forth to South Africa about 8 times since 2000. And when you talk with people who knew him, because many of the people that guide you through Robben Island, if you get a chance to go, you must go, if you can go. If you have the means to do it, I would say go. When you talk to the people in Robben Island who were the prison guards as well as the people who were in prison with him, in the very early stages, Mandela was not the leader. He was chosen to be the leader. And this is important history that people need to understand. He was chosen because of the qualities that he brought to that community within inside the walls of Robben Island. It was his character. So he has set a really good example, not only for South Africans, but also for us worldwide. And what I would recommend, or what I would suggest, is that we really begin to look at how we as adults can set those examples for young people. I contend that, a lot of times, and I've been in a lot of programs over the years, involved in community programs, what have you, and I always hear adults talk about what youth need. What youth need is good adult examples. All right? I really think that we need to get out of the game of saying this is what they need. Like, I just recently was, a few years ago, involved in character education program. Many of the teachers and administrators were saying, yeah, this will be great for the kids. And my question was, well, what about the adults? Do adults have a character education program? Kids learn, or students learn from us, whether we realize it or not. They watch us. And when you go to a place like South Africa and you watch young boys and young girls walking around adults, they are to be seen and not heard. And they go around, I mean, at a very young age, that is. When they get older, it's difficult not to hear them. What you see is young people watching adults, being adults. They're learning what it means to be an adult. They see adults solving problems. All right, so this concept of Ubuntu is a community concept that we must embrace. There are other ethical systems that I've studied amongst the Yoruba people. If many of you know in the audience that I've traveled a lot back and forth to Africa. There's another ethical system called Iwapele that comes out of the Yoruba people in Nigeria that has similar tenets. Taranga is an ethical system that comes out of Senegal. All right, and basically that means hospitality. You know, and if any of you have ever been to Senegal, it's probably one of the most hospitable places because it's steeped in the very ethical system that makes up their culture. And we have to do the same thing in our community. And we have to begin to do that because this is a total breakdown when it comes to these kinds of things. Without going through a whole long dissertation about it, I just wanted to point these things out to you as from an educational point of view that we need to begin to address. The other thing that I want to talk to you about, and this is more educational specific, is that in education, we always talk about the importance of the 3 R's. Can anybody tell me what the 3 R's are? Yes, that's one 3 R's, but there's another 3 R's. That's very, very important. All right? And that's relationships, relevancy, and rigor. Those are the three pieces. And so as we talk about the achievement gap, academic excellence, reading, writing, and arithmetic is important, all right? But from a teaching point of view, relationships, relevancy, and rigor are just as important. So a lot of times people throw those 3 R's out and they have no particular order. Some people say relevancy, relationships, rigor. Some people say rigor, all right? Well, my thing is this, as an educator, and I'll tell you this, and if you have any educational audience, they will probably support me. If you don't have a relationship with that student, you're going to get rigor mortis. All right? You have to have a relationship first with the student. Education is about developing a relationship. So they say, Professor Burton or Aukram, how are you going to develop a relationship? There's so many barriers. Jefferson County Public Schools, when I came in 1999, had 1,300 homeless students in 1999. And I thought that was a lot in 1999. The last figure I heard is 15,000. We got 110,000 students in Jefferson County Public Schools. Do the math. Over 10% of our population is homeless. Okay? So that's just one barrier. There are many barriers. that we're faced with. And these are barriers that not only the school district has to solve, but we have to solve collaboratively with the community. It is a community problem. It's not a school department problem. Over 52% of the population of Jefferson County Public Schools come from single-parent homes. That's white, black, Asian, you name it, all right? Now, I want to say this because this is important. I'm not suggesting that a student who was raised by one parent, that's negative. There are many students, many people who have been raised by their mother or their father, that matter, and are functional citizens in our society. But when we talk about African American males, and we talk about the problems that they face, the barriers that they face, one of the issues that comes up is, do they have, or one of the questions of, do they have significant male role models? Because when we talk about that statistic, let's face it, even though we do have fathers raising children in our community, the overwhelming majority are black women, or women in general. So that's another barrier. Another barrier, which I think leads to the issue of violence and incarceration, is the fact that we have low literacy levels in our community. In other words, our children are not reading. In fact, if you look at the latest data, African Americans look at more TV than anybody on the planet. Now, this could be substantiated. But at the same time, if you just look at Louisville alone, in terms of the reading levels that are taking place within our school district, African Americans pretty much are underachieving. We're not reading to our children. We're not encouraging reading in our community. And this is kind of hard to take, kind of hard to understand in some cases, but it is true. I'm here to tell you, and Anthony knows this as well as some of the others that are here, many states determine the number of prisons that they're going to build based on third grade reading scores. In other words, if they know that reading is one of the factors that leads to incarceration, we need to do something about that. We're talking about school to prison pipeline. Well, we need to develop programs in front of that pipeline to stop them going through the pipeline. Because once they're in the pipeline, we got programs to deal with it when they're in the pipeline. But once they come out of that pipeline, all the sludge and everything that they've acquired by being in that pipeline, we now have to clean that off, plus deal with the deficits that are there. So it's important for us to understand what I was talking about earlier, which is relationships. Because I think that is the catalyst for all that we're talking about here today. Look, they're either going to have good relationships in the schools, or they're going to go out in the street. And not, I mean, for them, it'll be good relationships. Why is it good relationships? Because they feel like they belong to something. You know, the hierarchy of needs, the sense of belonging. If a kid doesn't feel like they belong to the school or to the classroom, where are they going to go out on the street? Is there learning happening out on the street? Absolutely. when I was out on the streets with a lot of these guys, they knew how to count. I put some of the guys that I counseled, I put them on Wall Street in a minute. They were very shrewd business people. All right? It's just that they were in the wrong situation and eventually caught up with them. So relationships are very key. The other thing is relevancy. I just want to say one thing about the relationships I think is important, just to drive my point home. I have taught as a professor at the University of Louisville School of Education, and I remember very clearly one class I had discussed an observation that I had made while in a kindergarten class. And most of the people that were in that class were either principals, assistant principals, people who were working on their rank 1, what have you. And so I shared that observation. My observation was that I noticed that the teacher, the kindergarten teacher in that class was very rewarding to students who did well in a particular activity or what have you. So she would embrace the little white boy and say, "Great job." She would embrace the little white girl, "Great job." She would even embrace the black girl. But what I observed that class was that she gave accolades to the black boy, but did not embrace him the way that she embraced, right? So I brought this up not to say that she intentionally did that. I don't think that was an intentional thing, all right? I think that was a subconscious situation that took place. But one of my students, who's at the time, she became a principal, but at the time she was a kindergarten teacher. She said that would never happen in a kindergarten class. I said, well, I'm just telling you, I observed that. So a couple weeks later, she came back, and she was very upset, disturbed, or at least I noticed that she was different because she had actually observed, we discussed that conversation, but she had actually observed what I had saw in another class in the school that she taught at. And I say that to say that our black boys are treated differently from day one when they come into schools. Okay, so what happens? They go to first grade, all right? They're not on grade level on reading because their word count, when they came into school, they were at a disadvantage. A lot of these kids coming out of the East End, they're front-loaded. They're coming in with 200-300 words already. Gets to the second grade, still doesn't have it, can't catch up. And get to the third grade, what you start to see is a correlation of suspension and referral problems with these kids who are not reading. So the pipeline starts very, very early. And that's how it plays out in education. And in many ways, we are the incubators, if you will, all right, for that pipeline. So if we want to address this issue, we got to shut that pipeline down, all right? And the only way we can shut it down is by school community collaboration. We have a program called Everyone Reads, although I don't think that that's enough. I think we do need to do more. It is a start, all right? And we get people in those schools, all right? 75% of the total population in Metro Louisville has nothing to do with public education. In other words, they don't have a grandchild, they don't have a child. So what are people saying? Well, I don't have anything to do with that, you know. But you have a lot to do with it because when somebody starts to break into your house or into your car, right? You know, so this is an important piece. So I can't emphasize, as Anthony talked about volunteerism, Doug talks about volunteerism, I think it's important. I just want to quickly go through the last two. Relevancy. Relevancy is an important piece because once you develop the relationship, you got to make education relevant to the student. And I don't care if it's a formal education situation where you're in the school or if you're in the community, in your churches, in your community agencies, whatever. That's referred to as non-formal education. No matter what you're talking about, you have to make it relevant. You have to make it real. We were talking about, before we started, I was in the back talking about this. Children know when you're real. I go into schools every day, or when I do go into schools, I see successful teachers. And the first thing that I notice about the successful teachers is this, that they make it real for the kids. So what does that mean, making it real? They make it relevant, all right, to their situation. All right, talked about the homeless situation. Many of our teachers come in teaching students and not even understanding that maybe or perhaps students who are in their classroom have had nowhere to stay the night before, all right? Or they're grouping up with other family members, because that's also considered homeless in our district. So these are very, very important things that we as a community need to educate ourselves about. Relevancy also talks about the fact that I think that it's important, especially when we talk about black males. We've been running a street academy that was started by two of our, I guess, one of the best leaders that have ever, I would say ever, but two leaders that I think had done a lot for the community here. And I guess I speak that way because I had a chance to actually work with them. But there were other leaders as well. But that's Dr. Joseph McMillan and Reverend Coleman. And in 2005, we had probably the largest number of homicides in this city. I don't know if people remember this. If you can go back that far. It was all on the news, all the news stations. Large number. I think it was up into the 80s, you know. So Reverend Coleman and Reverend Lewis Coleman and Dr. McMillan, who was a professor emeritus in early childhood education at the university, went to Stephen Dashner, who was then the superintendent, and asked him that if it would be possible for them to start this street academy for young boys, young African-American boys. Because what we were finding is many of these homicides were young kids who were mules within the drug trade that was happening here. And so we started Street Academy. Street Academy is still running. But what we try to do is to make it relevant for them. All right, literacy is a major piece that we focus on, but it's social emotional behavior that we give a heavy dose on. And also memorization. We take them through a number of things that they have to memorize and internalize, because we feel if they start putting things in themselves that are positive, then we'll start to see positive things happen. And our first cohort actually graduated last year, and one of the kids who came into the Street Academy back in 2005, who was throwing desks, who were very angry and bitter and what have you, graduated with honors. And that's because we developed relationships. We made it real with them, all right? And once you develop relationships and you bring in the relevancy, students will do anything for you. They will produce. Many of you have seen this if you've coached a team or whatever. All right? They will take that extra, all right? You can then bring in that motivational piece, and they can conquer the world. And so these 3 R's are very, I think, essential for us to understand. And we need to keep it very simple. It's not complex. This is not a complex proposition. Okay? I think that we should have young people shadowing us. Not for one day, as much as possible. So people will say, well, today, where are all the young people? There are some young people in the audience, but there are adults in the audience. And my position is this. We deal with what we got. All right? This is the deck that was dealt to us today. We had to deal with it, right? I'm an old bid-wits player, right? So, you know, I've gotten a number of Bostons with a bad hand because I had a good partner, all right? But the point I'm making is that we have to work where we are and really develop relationships amongst ourselves, get to know each other, you know, take some time off from that TV, all right? Which really, when you think about it, some of the programs, many of the programs are mostly police programs. All right? A lot of times, I'm watching the news, I can't make a distinction between the news and the program that it transitioned to. You know what I'm saying? So, and what does that do? It has a profound effect on us where the point where people don't want to come out. If you don't want to come out, we can't relate with one another. Well, I'll just tweet. I'll just go on Facebook. All right? Social media is now creating this gap in between us where we're not human anymore. And to be human means we have to come together like we are today and have conversations and discussions. All right? So I'm going to leave you with that. And I'm hoping that, as Anthony said, that we use this day as a way to, come together, come up with strategies in terms of how we can build community, because I think that is the key right now, building community. I thank you.
Come on up for a second. I'm trying to pull up this that was in the paper, but I can't get it big enough. It's always impossible until it's done. Nelson Mandela. I think, why don't you lead us? I mean, we talk about equality, we talk about freedom. Nelson Mandela did it the hard way for us. I think a moment of silence might be in order.
Yeah.
Let's have a moment of silence for Nelson Mandela. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as Aukram said, education is so important. Education is the solution to a lot of problems in the world, and that is most certainly true with violence. When people know better, when kids know better, they do better. Mary Lou Angelou. And hear him talk about all these programs in Africa, which I've never heard of, and I hope to go one day. There's already in the world enough educational material to cure violence on 1,000 planets. So we already have it, back with the Surgeon General's report back in 2001. He said that too. We just need to apply it. It's a very makeable destination. Peace in Louisville, peace in the state, peace in the nationality. Peace, it's coming anyway, with or without us. So we definitely have to apply all this education, all this peaceful education that already exists. And Aukram, you're a Louisville treasure, national treasure, experience and leadership. You might have trouble in the primary there, Mr. Smith. But